But we are also looking ahead to Sunday here on Fantasy Live. We are going game by game with our Week 1 preview, starts, sits, and beyond throughout the hour. So let's kick it off with the Sunday night contest. So why don't we start at the end? Because, that's what we do here. We got the Rams and the Lions. Florio, who you got?
I want to start pretty much everyone in this game, but Matthew Stafford in particular. When these teams met in the playoffs last year, Stafford went for 367 and 2. Last I checked, he, Kupp, Puka, and Kyren are all fully healthy. And when that happened last year, they were one of the very best offenses in football, plus high-scoring indoor game. I would play Stafford over names like Purdy, Herbert, Caleb, to just name a few.
I would have no hesitation starting David Montgomery in this contest, a rushing touchdown in 11 of 14 games last season. And we've seen it from Dan Campbell during his coaching tenure with the Detroit Lions, is that he loves to feature a goal line back. It was Jamal Williams 2 years ago. David Montgomery filled that role last year and will fill it this year. It's not enough to keep me from starting Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think if you have some questions about David Montgomery, you're fine. Start him in this one.
So we got that one. Should be a lot of fun. Rematch of a playoff game from last year. Have a big AFC South matchup as well in Week 1 with the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts. And I really do like Adonai Mitchell as a sleeper. We talked about one rookie wide receiver with Xavier Worthy. Now we got Mitchell there in Indianapolis. Worked primarily from the slot in the preseason. And even though we didn't see a lot of Anthony Richardson last year, he was heavily targeting slot receivers. About 30% of his attempts went to the guys in the slot. Also, Josh Downs has been ruled out for this week. So Michael Pittman, we know, is the wide receiver one. There are a lot of targets up for grabs. We could see Indianapolis work A.D. Mitchell in quite a bit to start his NFL career.
I like A.D. Mitchell a lot, even though I dropped him in a league this morning for Justin Fields. But I love his quarterback, Anthony Richardson. He scored 18 fantasy points against the Texans last year. He didn't even finish the second quarter in that game. He averaged 25 fantasy points per game in the 2 games that he did finish. This could be a high-scoring game. The upside is so high. The only way you should sit Anthony Richardson is if you're in a one-quarterback league and you somehow paired him with Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. Besides that, start him.
If you did that, then you
Let me write that down. Anthony Richardson. Let me see if he's available in my league still. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's move on to the Cowboys and the Browns. Some are calling this the Amari Cooper revenge game. I mean, I'm not, but some are. But Rank, who are you paying attention to in this one?
So that would mean Jerry Jeudy goes out and has the best game. And I would say to start him. I think that Cleveland last season showed that they can throw the football a little bit. A team that was, the Paul Brown days of throwing the ball are now bringing that to the modern NFL, of course, or whatever. Jerry Jeudy, though, they brought him in, and he's got a pretty good matchup. Bland is out for a couple of weeks. Diggs is returning from his ACL injury. The Cowboys, even despite the fact that their GM said they went all in during this offseason, it didn't feel that way.
He should talk to the owner.
Yeah, I would be at the owner's desk if I was that GM. And so I would go with Jerry Jeudy. I think this is a pretty good matchup for him and a huge opportunity for him to announce his presence in Cleveland.
Yeah, I would on the other side say beware of Dak Prescott in this one. And I know Cowboys Nation is going to come for me, but not only was Dak much better at home than on the road last year, averaging 16 fantasy points per game, but this is about the matchup. Marcus says that Myles Garrett is the closest thing to an actual living Avenger, and the Browns defense last year held quarterbacks to the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game. I would play guys like Stafford, Jared Goff, and Tua Tagovailoa over Dak in Week 1.
I feel like Cowboy fans probably aren't going to come for you. It feels like they've had the wind knocked out of them this offseason. It has not gone the way they wanted it to. We have a showdown in the Sunshine State with the Jacksonville Jaguars heading down to Miami to take on the Dolphins. And Florio, you look like you have an eye on a running back that we've all been really big on this offseason. Or Rank, actually.
No, okay, yeah, I was going to say Raheem Mostert is somebody that I'm looking at going to start. Obviously, everybody loves Devin Achane. He was a 2nd, 3rd round pick, but a lot of people who kind of punted on the running back position, or at least their RB2, ended up with Raheem Mostert because he was going in the 5th or 6th round. This is a great matchup against the Jags. Last season, they allowed the 9th most rushing yards of over 20 yards, and they also allowed a lot of production to the position. So, again, Raheem Mostert is getting overlooked a lot of times, but I'm starting him this week.
I am also starting Evan Ingram, and I know last year some of his bigger games came when Christian Kirk was out, but he was a consistent target earner all season long. 13 games with 8 or more targets last year, going against a Dolphins defense that has some changes going on. New defensive coordinator with Anthony Weaver taking over for Vic Fangio. I like the opportunity to have kind of Brian Thomas going over the top with Evan Ingram working underneath. Of course, a lot of us liked Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, and both those guys were not great. So hopefully that trend does not continue on Sunday. Steelers and the Falcons. Ian Rappaport told us about the potential change at starting quarterback for Pittsburgh, but Florio, the wide receiver one, still stays the same.
Yeah, I've been talking about a George Pickens breakout a lot this summer, and I'm starting him in week 1. I know it is a tough matchup on paper, and I feel a little bit more comfortable when I thought it was Russell Wilson starting, but still, Justin Fields is a good deep ball thrower. He helped elevate DJ Moore to be a wide receiver 1 last year. I think the upside is far too high and too much volume to get away from Pickens.
George Pickens.
Why was Justin Fields just catching a stray? Like he can't throw the ball to George Pickens?
No, he can.
Did you not see the year that DJ Moore had?
I literally just said that.
When we come
I
back,
liked it better when it was Russell.
we have another game going tonight. Packers and Eagles going down in Brazil. We got more predictions for you. It's Tudo Bem next. Back to our Sunday game previews. We got ranked Chicago Bears hosting the Tennessee Titans to start things off. So apparently what I'm being told, and this is unbelievable to me, you want to start a Bear in fantasy this week.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with starting Rome Odunze. I know last night a lot of people were talking about, why did these teams allow Xavier Worthy? I think the Bears will be very comfortable with their choice. Florio's Giants will be comfortable with Malik Neighbors. But I look at this, again, this comes down to the matchups. And I think with L'Jarius Sneed there, shadowing likely DJ Moore, they're going to open it up for Rome Odunze. And even when you don't have that situation, he is still the number 3 option who's going to draw a lot of single coverage. This guy can go out there and moss it between 2 guys anyways. So when you put him in single coverage, he is going to go out there and feast. I think Rome Odunze has one of the best debuts that we've seen out of a rookie wide receiver in quite some time. So I'm very comfortable starting him this week.
On the other side, Rank, you talk about it all the time. After Montez Sweat, the Bears' defense was elite at stopping the run, which is why I think Tajay Spears is a sit this week. I know there's a lot of talk about him and Tony Pollard splitting work and all this stuff, and I get that he's a good pass-catching back, but I need to see it first, given that we don't know how the work is going to be distributed, given that the matchup is so tough. I'm just going to take a wait-and-see approach unless you went 0 RB like I did in my home league, and you have no other choice to start him. Otherwise, I think you get away.
I have some interest in Tajay Spears. Very curious to see how he starts things off this week. The Commanders and the Buccaneers, and what could be a throw fest between Jaden Daniels and Baker Mayfield. And I will tell you that because it could be a throw fest, I like Zach Ertz as a sleeper this week. I know the Draftniks and the Devy folks out there are all about Ben Sinnott. His time has not yet come. Early in the season, I think we're going to see a lot of Zach Ertz. Yes, he was in a limited role last year in Arizona because of Trey McBride, but was still a quality target earner, targeted on about a quarter of his routes. Plus, you look at this Washington offense. Who's the number 2 option in the passing game after Terry McLaurin? You're facing a Bucs defense that last year gave up the 3rd most receptions, 3rd most receiving yards to tight ends. This isn't some sort of young quarterback tight end connection thing. That's pretty much been debunked. I just think Zach Ertz is going to go out there and get open, and Jaden Daniels is going to find him consistently in the early part of the season.
Yeah, Zach Ertz likes to play like 5 or 6 games before he lets the young guys fully take over. But speaking of the young guys taking over, Jaden Daniels. Start him. I don't care. You drafted him to be a QB1. I think he's very much so in play. Why? Because he can run. Even if he struggles as a passer, which I don't think he will in this game given the Bucs secondary and how much they struggled stopping the pass next year, for exactly what you see on your screen right now, that is why you should be starting him this week and pretty much every week in fantasy football.
Over to the Vikings and Florio's Giants. That's going to be the bit all year now. What do you mean? The Vikings obviously starting Sam Darnold. J.J. McCarthy, unfortunately, injured and out for the entirety of the season. But there is a Viking that you are paying attention to in this one, right?
I'm going to go with Aaron Jones. As everybody has been sitting here celebrating Josh Jacobs and this will be good. Like, Aaron Jones is the same guy. And he's going to a very similar situation, or at least one where he's probably going to get an opportunity to run the football a lot. And I'm sorry to say this, Mike, but The Giants are not going to be very good, and I anticipate the Vikings getting up on a lead in this one, which means they're going to be able to bleed the clock for a little bit. And to do that, they're going to be running Aaron Jones. So I think this is actually a pretty good game for him, and a lot of people are overlooking him.
You said they're the same guy, but Aaron Jones is actually catching the football in some of these highlights where you don't really see that so much with Josh Jacobs. Speaking of catching the football, I like Wan'Dale Robinson as a sleeper, who, by the way, Wan'Dale Robinson, he sort of feels like the Giants are trying to get a do-over from Kadarius Toney because that didn't really work out. I know Malik Neighbors is the wide receiver one in this offense. I'm not arguing that, but the rest of the pecking order is still very much undecided. Now, last year, that Vikings defense, they sort of played a lot of a kind of a cloud defense, got picked apart with short underneath quick throws. That is what Wan'Dale Robinson really excels at. Averaged less than 5 air yards per target in most games he played last season, but was second on the team in yards after the catch. I think that is how the Giants are going to go and try it.
We don't got to talk about Kadarius Toney anymore, by the way.
Hey,
Never
man.
happened.
Sorry.
He was like, wasn't he visiting Seattle recently? He might
Never
have a
happened.
gig somewhere at some point. Broncos and Seahawks. I can say that I got Bo Nix pilled by watching him play in the preseason. Florio, anybody else in particular, though, that you are big on this week?
I got Kenneth Walker pilled more and more as the summer went on, and I'm fully on board the breakout season, and I think it starts with a monstrous week 1. The Broncos last year struggled mightily at stopping the run. They allowed a lot of chunk plays as well, including the third most fantasy points per game to running backs. He is so explosive. Remember how excited we were about him? I think that he has RB1 week with top 5 potential in week 1.
Zach Charbonnet.
Why did you not like Bo Nix in college?
I mean, he was.
No one went to his birthday party.
Is that right?
He's Bo Callahan all of a sudden. Coming up, continuing our Sunday showdowns, another one that could be very high scoring and very entertaining. It's the Cardinals and the Bills. And Rank, you like James Conner in this one?
Yeah, I really like James Conner. So this is your team. You're a Bills fan? Okay.
And I love James Conner.
Okay, sorry. Well, I do like James Conner. I think that he's been a very productive player when he's been available, and I think that with the additions the Cardinals have made over the last couple of years with Trey McBride and now Marvin Harrison Jr., this really opens up the running game for him. And obviously, when you have a quarterback who is a threat to run himself, that really helps out. So I'm going to go with James Conner here.
Do like James Conner. On the other side, as a deep sleeper, I like Ray Davis for the Buffalo Bills. James Cook is going to get a lot of the work at the running back spot, no doubt about that. But he's never seen a lot of goal line work in his career. Last year, it was Latavius Murray that got that work near the end zone. 9 goal line carries compared to just 5 for Cook. We could see Ray Davis in that role this season. We could also see him just get carries between the 20s. And he gets to face a run defense that last year was the worst in the NFL. Over to the Raiders and the Chargers. That game will kick off just across the way from us over at SoFi Stadium. And Florio, who is a guy you like in this one?
I think Ladd McConkey is a sleeper in this one. I loved Ladd McConkey throughout the NFL draft process. He reminded me of Tyler Lockett because he can do a bit of everything. He can play out wide, in the slot, win after the catch, win downfield. And the Chargers have a very thin wide receiver room, so he could get a lot more volume than anticipated. He's got a good quarterback, but this is for people in a little bit deeper leagues. Like if you're in a 10-team league, I wouldn't start Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, and similarly, Brock Bowers, I would say, is a start, but I know there's a bunch of people who ended up taking him as your second tight end. So maybe you don't make that move if you have like Kyle Pitts or Dalton Kincaid or somebody like that. But I really, truly believe Brock Bowers ends up as the second most targeted pass catcher in this offense. I said this in my write-up, my mock draft with a twist of why I wanted the Raiders to draft Brock Bowers is because they could really take advantage of him. Luke Getsy loves to run 12 personnel. Gardner Minshew excels under 12 personnel. I think Brock Bowers has a great debut.
The idea of Brock Bowers in a Luke Getsy offense is really intriguing.
Great, yeah.
I really like that a lot. The Panthers and the Saints, big one in the NFC South. I've been looking for improvement from the Panthers, and I like Chuba Hubbard as a sleeper to start the season. Last year, he took over the RB1 job from Miles Sanders in Week 6 and never gave it back. Now, Dave Canales saying it could be more of a 50-50 split, especially until Jonathan Brooks gets healthy. But what I like, we saw Rachaad White in Canales' offense last year. That boosted his fantasy production, made him an outstanding fantasy running back. And the Saints last year gave up a lot of yards on the ground. I like to see Hubbard get some work this week.
Wild that we're talking about multiple Panthers here, but I think Deontay Johnson is a start. I've been hyping him up all summer, and a tough matchup on paper is not scaring me away. He is still an elite separator. I think he is going to get a ton of volume each and every week, and I still believe in Bryce Young. I think we see a resurgence out of him this year, so I'm starting Deontay Johnson with confidence in Week 1.
One last game to get to this week. It is the Patriots and the Bengals. Still keeping an eye on what happens with Jamar Chase, but there is somebody else you're paying attention to there.
Well, they'll want to run the football if that's the case. So I'm going to go with Chase Brown. The Bengals are very excited about him. There's no accident of why they kept Chase Brown and let Joe Mixon get traded away. To me, I was talking with somebody in the Bengals organization. They're like, he's a home run hitter. He's kind of their Ellie De La Cruz, whereas Joe Mixon was more Hal Morris. Like, he was great, but bad footwork and everything. No. But no, this is what they want. They want a guy who's explosive, who can take the rock all the way down the field on one shot. So I really love Chase Brown. It's not just this week, but moving forward.
Man, Hal Morris catching a stray on this show.
I love Hal Morris.
I have a sleeper on the other side, and it's Demario Douglas. And I know we spent a lot of time this offseason talking about Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, trying to figure out who the receiver is we want in this offense. It's probably Pop Douglas. From week 8 on, he led the team with a 23% target share. He has set a goal for himself to have 1,000 yards this season. And look, I expect the Patriots are going to be in a negative game script in this game and probably a lot of games this season, which means could be a lot of opportunity for Demario Douglas to get some work in. So,
Can I give a shout